You're listening to Heal Through Humor, hosted by yours truly, Talia Bombola. I'm a licensed therapist on a mission to help others learn about themselves and laugh along the way. Welcome, listeners and viewers, to another episode of Heal Through Humor. I have been counting down the days till you have been on this podcast. I'm so excited to introduce Logan Ury. She is the Director of Relationship Science at Hinge, and I would love it if you could introduce yourself more, Logan. You take the stage. You are the expert here.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. And I've also been excited. A nice way to spend time with you. Yeah, so I work at Hinge. I have this great role, doing research and kind of thinking and talking about trends in dating. And then I also work as a dating coach one-on-one with people, and I teach classes, and I wrote a book called How to Not Die Alone. So I really just get to think and teach and coach people about dating all day, which is such an honor.
That's a dream. What got you, I have to ask, classic question, what got you started in all of this? Where did your interest begin?
Yeah, it's funny, in the beginning, it was like this big leap of faith. Like, I think there's something here. I feel like dating is changing a lot. Like, it was the beginning of Tinder, and I was just like, all right, I'm really interested in this. I want to learn about it and figure out different ways. And now I'm like, I've been doing it for so long. But looking back, it was a few things. One was being in that Tinder moment, being on Tinder myself, and feeling like I really could use some help, like just feeling like, wow, this is really confusing and it's totally different. And I remember the first night I got it, I was swiping on all these people. So one was just a personal experience of dating clearly has changed. And then the second one was when my parents got divorced, really thinking about, I can't take happily ever after for granted. There really is something here around what gets people into relationships and helps people stay in relationships. And it made me just want to understand, what is the science behind this?
Well, I am glad that you went on that journey.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love Hinge. I met my partner off of Hinge, so I can attest to its 100% success rate.
I love hearing that.
It was a more pleasurable and pleasant experience to be on Hinge than I think a lot of the other.
I'm so glad. What year was that? A while ago?
Yeah. I'm trying to do, I think COVID brain is kicking in.
I totally get it. I love hearing about people who met during COVID. That's sort of why I asked. Like, I love those stories of like, I was doing this, and then during COVID, I did something differently. So I was just wondering if that was you, but it sounds like you've been together for a while.
Yes, happily. And I'm glad to never have to date again, which is very nice. Yeah. And I think part of the being able to empathize with a lot of the clients that I work with on dating and relationships, and it is so much different than it used to be 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It is not, I don't think we knew how much it was going to evolve. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, we may have paced ourselves a little bit more and throw in a global shift where most things were online instead of in person, and we didn't have our coping skills. And it was so beneficial to see that a lot of the apps were like Hinge were changing with the times. So much appreciated to all of your science.
Yeah, I agree.
So what do you think are important? I know you have a quiz on your website that helps people. Can you tell us more about that? And then we can talk about it. Cool.
Yeah. So in my book, one of the big takeaways is this concept called the 3 dating tendencies. And these are 3 sort of types of daters that I've come across in my coaching. And it's really all about unrealistic expectations. So if you're interested in your type, you can take the quiz at loganury.com/quiz, and you'll find out if you're a romanticizer. So somebody who really expects relationships to be easy and for it to be your soulmate and for it to be passionate and the falling in love feeling the whole time. Or if you're a maximizer, somebody who expects your partner to fulfill all of your dreams and to be the perfect person, and you just have to keep researching. Or the hesitator, the person who's like, just not ready to date yet. I'll date when I'm ready.
Yeah. And I remember hearing your interview on the You Up podcast, another one of my absolute favorites, and really being able to delineate between being a maximizer and a satisficer, and knowing, and that's probably separate from your quiz, but I do think that mindset comes into dating as well. It's like, well, how much better could it get? Or this is the best that I will get. And it sounds like this might be an evolution of a bit of that thought process.
Yeah, I mean, it's been really interesting. Like, I love having this language to describe it. So, for example, like if I meet someone who's not familiar with my work or the quiz, they might just say oh, you work in dating. That's really cool. You know, I'm waiting to date until I get a new job or move cities or this and that. And it's like in my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm talking to a hesitator. And then, yeah, like, I mean, obviously I want to make sure it's like solicited advice, but it's just really, I think it's really helpful to have these categories, and it helps people explain to their friends, like, I'm a hesitator, I need help with this. So I'm very happy to have put some language out into the world that helps people identify what's going on for them and then hopefully adjust and make a change based on that.
Yes, knowledge is definitely power when it comes to dating and relationships. I'm that way too. I have a program. All of my coaching clients get it, but people can purchase it separately from that. And that's on my website, and it walks them through so many juicy, detailed assessments that when you line all of them up, it's like, oh, this is why I am the way I am.
Yeah, that's huge.
This is why I view relationships. This is why my attachment is the way it is. And it really gives a blueprint for them to know themselves. And my firm belief is that as deeply as you know yourself is as deeply as you can allow, maybe not want to. That's more work to be done, but allow someone else to get to know you. And that knowledge really is power when it comes to dating. So wow, these quizzes are going to be just like a power for all of these clients.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So what would you say the main takeaways are for somebody who is so fed up and frustrated with dating and they really want to find maybe not the one, but a one? They want to become a partner of someone.
Yeah. You know, it's definitely like the main clientele that I work with, you know, people who are like, I've tried a lot of different things haven't worked out yet. I'll have people who are like, Logan, I've gone out on 100 dates in the last 3 years and no one's out there and this and that. So I definitely understand that that's the mindset of a lot of people. And it is hard for me to just say, you know, have a good attitude. Like, somebody's going to be attracted to how positive you are. Like, that's much obviously easier said than done. But there's a couple things that I would work with that person on. So one is really understanding like what they're bringing to the table. I think so many people think like, my city is the worst for dating, or there's no one here. I've matched with every possible girl in San Francisco, like whatever it is, and really helping them see like, okay, well, what am I bringing to this scenario? So maybe it's that you're feeling really burned out and you need to take a break. Maybe it's that you've had the same profile for a long time, so you're actually having the same types of conversations about your pictures and your prompts, and it's time to switch that up so that you get into new conversations. Maybe it's that you are going on the same date over and over and it's not bringing out a great side of you. And so understanding there's pieces that are out of your control, but there's also pieces that are within your control. And how can you make sure that you're really putting your best foot forward within that realm of things that you can impact?
Great advice. A lot of the clients that I work with ask what types of pictures to put on their app. And so I'm curious to have a discussion with you about what you think some of the best ones are. I recommend not everything be a shirtless mirror selfie, obviously. Yeah. Not everything be a fishing photo, and not everything be just of you or all super professional model type pictures. I think at a certain age, like older clientele I've had, they want to zhuzh up their profile a little bit.
Yeah,
so they do like
that makes sense.
And they're you know, they're older, they're 50s or so, and I think that's very on brand for that chapter and season of their life. But what would you say, photo and prompt wise, knowing you know from Hinge?
This is one that I can speak to authoritatively because we've done a lot of research on this at Hinge, like specifically people that are getting a lot of matches and getting into long conversations and going on dates. Like, what do they have on their profile and what are people drawn to? So a couple key tips. So one of them is your first photo is so important. I know it's obvious, but it's like, if people don't like your first photo, they're not going to, you know, scroll through to see the rest of your profile. So you really want to have that one be great. And your first photo should be a clear headshot, no filters, no sunglasses, just like, this is what I look like, not you and your sister, just you. And then yeah, exactly. And then for the rest of the photos, I recommend having one that's a full body shot, one showing you doing an activity you love. That's a great thing for somebody to ask you about, or you can go do that on a date. One, at least one with friends and family, but where it's really clear that this isn't my ex or someone I'm interested in. And you can tell who I am. It's not like you're getting lost in a bridesmaid's photo. and really showing different sides of yourself. So if, you know, exactly what you said about the photo shoot, it's like, if you do a photo shoot of you and your dog and you have 4 great photos from that, I wouldn't use more than one, because that's only showing me one side of yourself, what you wore on that one day, what, you know, what the city looked like that day, and you and your dog. Like, show me different sides of yourself, have variety, tell a story. And then when it comes to the prompts, it's really about sparking conversation and having somebody say, oh, like, you're interested in that, so am I. It's like, it's a conversation starter versus like trying to, you know, be too sarcastic, or, you know, something like the hinge prompt. Well, this is more in the cliche category, but it's like, I'm only overly competitive about everything. It's like, how is somebody supposed to respond to that? Or I'm the kind of texter who doesn't write back. It's like, that's not really something that somebody can get into a conversation with you about. So really thinking about, like, where might this lead? And is it a place that I want to go?
I love those 2 prompts. I'm laughing because I remember seeing so many of those, and I'm like, cool. As a therapist, this is letting me know a lot about you.
Totally.
And, and with the not texting back, as somebody who was formerly anxiously attached, that to me, I was grateful when people put that on, because it was an automatic filter of like, well, this isn't going to work. Like, you're already letting me know that this is not going to be a priority. Nope. It doesn't matter how hot you are. This is not going to work. So I love the variety of the prompts too.
The texting one is interesting because I feel like it comes up more than I might think, where people, like, I was even talking to somebody yesterday and she was like, I've gone on 4 dates with this guy. I like him. Things are going well, except he really is very slow to respond. Like, what should I do? Should I bring it up? Should I not? And it's interesting just like how many relationships never really got off the ground because people are mismatched through texting. And generally what I feel is like, somebody doesn't have to be as into texting as you are, or as not into texting as you are, but you need to kind of, they need to like meet your bare minimum. Yes. And so for her, I was like, you know, I don't know if you should bring it up yet, but like, if things continue, you can just say like, oh, like, I'm the kind of person who likes to be in touch. Like, you know, I'd love if you could, you know, let me know what's going on, or just say like, hey, like, when we're making a plan, it's really helpful to me if I hear back from you. Just something that's like, hey, this is a need of mine, and like, this is what you can do about it. But it is interesting how often people complain that they have mismatched texting styles.
I am glad you brought that up. I've done a lot of research on that myself.
Oh, tell me about it.
Sample sizes from clients, and also just general data and research, knowing the difference in preference of communication between men and women also, I think, is of highlight, or the way that we approach the world is really how to describe it. Because sometimes, and I've talked to a lot of men about this, they're like, that is absolutely it. Like, can you put that out there? So here's me putting it out there. The communication via text especially is, there's a purpose to it, and the purpose is need to know. Tell me what I need to know. I'll let you know what you need to know. It doesn't mean it can't evolve to be more romantic or thinking about you, etc. But if there's a mismatch of the view of what the purpose of it is and the desire of it, then it will continue to be those lines crossed of, well, if I think a guy really likes me, he should fill in the blank. Usually it's, he should do everything that I would do to demonstrate that I'm in love, which is a whole other episode 100%. That we could do. It's the mismatch expectations. The communication and the research that I've done about communication shows that if we have somebody who only views texting or communication in that medium as it's for need to know, and the other person is like, well, I'm trying to build a relationship with you, the likelihood, and because women are so affected by the written word, I recommend to not message for a long time on the apps, to get to like a FaceTime or a phone call to vet the person, to feel with your, whatever your gut center is, and then be able to go on a date if you feel like it's a good fit, rather than being in a halfway relationship and you haven't even met them and it's the first date and you're like, I've divulged so much information, I don't even like this person. So there's like definitely a blend of the purpose of it.
So what, I love this topic, like, what's your recommendation for a woman who's like, I like the guy in person, but I'm not getting my needs met in between? What would you say to her about either like letting it go or asking for what she wants? How would you recommend saying that?
So for the determining if it's worthwhile to bring up, I think, is the first step. When you look at this interaction with the person while you're with them, if all of your needs are getting met, and those are high on your priorities list, or your desired, like core desired traits for a partner, then evaluating truly how important is the texting. Like, if it increased, if it would make a big difference, then yes, please ask for it. And when you ask for it, ask in a way that incentivizes them to give it to you. So from a young age, and we see this with different types of aggression on playgrounds, even with difference between boys and girls when they're little. How do we try to get our needs met? And with women, we're very sensitive to criticism. And so we think that criticizing the person into being into a different behavioral pattern is going to work. But in reality, it's incentivizing them to feel like they'll win at it. I would look forward to our date even more. I would love it if it would make, this is what this would provide for me to kind of awaken that, like,
it's really smart.
This would make me win and provide. I would love to do that for you. The other person may not be texting you as much, let's say, because they don't see the same value. I view it as need to know. We got all the information done. I'm going to go back to work. If I know it would provide safety, security, desire, intimacy, and all these other things that I benefit from, I'm happy to try and include it more, and let me know if it's enough, and let me know if I can do more of it. So appreciate it when you get it as a positive reinforcement. That's behavioral training at its finest, and making sure that the other person knows that that's something that you want, rather than punishing them for them not meeting an expectation or need that they didn't know they were supposed to.
I think that's brilliant advice and really helpful. And it just makes so much sense. It's like, instead of saying to someone, hey, I can't tell if you like me because you don't text me enough, saying, you know, I'm really enjoying getting to know you, and I'd feel even closer to you if we texted more, something like that. I think that's such good advice.
Yes. And it can feel so, one of my clients calls it icky and vulnerable.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, then that means you're on the right track.
I love that.
And we're not used to communicating in that way. We're trying to learn who we are and who we would be a good fit for, and how best to communicate to sustain it, coming from maybe different generations, or what we viewed from our parents was always fighting, never having discussions. There was like either all conflict or no conflict. So we're kind of just sitting here like a raw nerve trying to suss out how to communicate and be in a relationship. And there's not classes. I mean, some schools are adding it in more. There's not classes for this. We don't learn this from a young age, which I think would be of a great benefit if we had this foundation of how to communicate your needs 101, preschool and beyond. It would feel so natural. I think it would change the dating landscape. And like in a longitudinal study, I would love to see that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I was listening to a Brene Brown podcast this morning, and she was talking about like when she gets pressured into something, like she says like a half-hearted yes, and within 10 minutes it turns into like a resentful yes. I just feel like people are walking around with so much resentment all the time, really thinking about like, okay, well, you feel less resentful if you made your needs and boundaries known, but that's really hard for people.
Yes. And that is why I specialize in confidence and assertiveness, to help people understand you have those needs, you have those wants. Human beings are horrified and would never want to admit that we have needs, because we don't want to be seen as needy, and we don't want to be seen as weak. So reframing it and understanding your core needs are core to who you are, and there's no way you could possibly meet all of them. That stems from infancy. We can't even hold our neck up without our primary caregiver. You're not supposed to be able to meet all of your own needs, and think of it as a positive empowerment. How much better could I be, and how much could I better the lives around me if I'm able to articulate effectively what I want and need, and have it feel like a win-win, rather than bully somebody into meeting a need by hinting at them or punishing them if they don't meet it. Like, we don't need to do that anymore. We can just really,
I think that's so smart. Yeah. I mean, I think I do this all the time, but bullying somebody into meeting your needs, and then you're like, well, I got my need met. It's like, actually didn't feel very good for me or the other person. At what cost? And it's not that sustainable.
No. I'm very into sustainable changes that feel congruent, so that you wake up every day feeling authentic, and it's not like you're putting on a mask and then taking it off when you get home.
Yeah.
Good. Well, it sounds like we're very aligned on a lot of these things.
Yeah, but I love what you're saying, especially the texting thing. I mean, it's just like so many people talk about, where do I meet someone and what should my dating app profile be? But I actually feel like it's that in between stage. Like, you have a good enough profile that someone's connecting with you. You've gone on some good dates, but it's like, how do I get from date 2 to date 9? Like, I actually think texting ends up being a big part of that.
Yeah. And I will say, from the science on like evolutionary psychology, that when a guy gives us their number, or when we start to be in a relationship, is when we have that first communication exchange. It's not the same timeline. Like, we're very, not on the same page when it comes to our counterparts often, that we're like, oh, he gave me his number. And then we start envisioning, and it's like the Homer Simpson meme where he's like downstairs in the wedding gown. And guys are like, yeah, I gave her my number. We're chatting. We're not on the same timeline. So that's one of the missions that I'm on, is to help us understand what it's like for the other person that we're dating, and to be more curious about their experience. And I know it's unfathomable that they could not feel like they're in a relationship, that you know that you are, but we're not on the same timelines often. So don't make it mean something it doesn't. And also don't try to force something that isn't quite there. We feel a different timeline. We view time differently. We have a finite clock. Even we view work time on a monthly schedule, and the world is built on a 24-hour male cycle. So having that balance and picking what works best for you will involve needing to communicate your needs out loud and knowing that you're more affected by the written word. Don't spend so much time texting and building up, because it's going to hurt worse when you go on the date and you might not like the person. They might not follow up. They might ghost, which I don't think going on one date and then if both of you don't follow up, I don't really think that's ghosting. I think it's more if you're like continuing to chat and all of a sudden it falls off. And I love the post
for sure
about that too. You and I align on that.
Yeah. I love everything you're saying. Yeah, I agree.
Cool. Well, I appreciate your time. Is there anything else before we wrap up that you want listeners to know? How best can I support your mission for people to?
Oh, that's so nice. Yeah. So I am launching a course soon that's going to be about making a great profile. So people can check that out on my website, loganury.com. And then I also send out a weekly newsletter with different dating and relationship research and advice and personal stories. So people can also go to my website to check that out. And then they can follow me on Instagram at Logan Ury.
Yes. And make sure you get her book if you are listening to this.
Oh, yes. I forgot. I also wrote a book.
Such a good book. Right?
Thank you very much.
It's such a good book. Even if you're in a relationship, it's worth a refresher, because it can really reframe how appreciative you can be that you don't have to deal with dating again. I will attest to it. I read it before, or I don't think it was out when I was going through that, but reading it even while being in a partnership was like, yeah, no, this is nice. This is nice to not have to deal with. And it helps with clients because we have common language now. So thank you for that.
I'm so glad. Yeah, of course. Well, thank you for this conversation. And I loved everything that I learned from you, and I love the exchange. So thanks for having me.
You are so welcome. I will talk to you again soon.
Thanks.